Hello and welcome. We are back with the third episode of Ask the Experts. My name is James Ellis and I'm the marketing coordinator here at Couch & Associates. We are a marketing technology company based in Toronto with offices in the UK and the US, and we offer a full suite of services to digitally empower firms. The episode will focus on the marketing automation platform Pardot. I have some familiar faces with me today: James Papke, Daniel Haidt, and Jonathan Alg. Are all senior marketing consultants, and Abrar Ali is our senior technology manager. The new face with us today is Tarek Naeem. He is the director of support and solutions at PathFactory. After receiving a PathFactory related question, we reached out to our partners there to provide the best answer that we could for you. Question 1 is, how do I leverage PathFactory data into Pardot scoring? Tarek, please, will you start us off with that?
Thank you very much, James, and I'm glad to be on this podcast with you and with all the clients who have joined us today. Let me start by saying that incorporating PathFactory engagement data into a Pardot scoring model significantly enhances the quality of the scoring model without introducing a lot of complexity into its implementation. This owes it to the nature of the engagement data that PathFactory collects. PathFactory collects the amount of time a visitor or a prospect spends engaging with an asset online. As you can see on my screen, that is recorded in our analytics, and we also record the number of assets that a person engages with in a single click. We call that the binge behavior. And a good analogy to think of it is the way that you consume shows through Netflix. You can binge watch multiple episodes of your favorite show in one single session, as opposed to watching an episode a week every Sunday at 8 p.m. So these are the two pillars that make PathFactory engagement data unique and stand in contrast to the Pardot engagement data, which I'll touch on in a second. But as you can see here on my screen, we've got Brian and Peter. They both have clicked on the email link. But Brian ended up spending a little bit over 6 minutes looking at the content, or 26 minutes looking at the content, engaged with 4 assets, and showed a meaningful engagement with each one of these 4 assets. This stands in contrast to Peter, who clicked on the link in the email, merely looked at the first asset, and just bounced away. From a Pardot perspective, Brian and Peter's behavior is identical. They both have clicked on the email. But in reality, as we can see, their behavior could not have been any more different. And that is why PathFactory engagement data helps significantly enhance the quality of the Pardot scoring model that is built based off of PathFactory engagement data. If you could please advance me to the next slide. By virtue of our integration of the PathFactory and Pardot integration, we can send that data that captures the amount of time that the person has spent looking at the assets and the binge behavior as well. We can send that data easily into Pardot, and we make it live on the prospect custom fields on the prospect record. From there, we work with our clients to understand the strategy and the goals that they're trying to achieve by modifying their existing Pardot scoring model to include PathFactory engagement data. We also try to understand some of the limitations that they'd like to address and some of the enhancements that they'd like to see. And from there, we come up with the best strategy that would help them achieve these goals. But just to give you an example as to how one flavor of that implementation would look like, we could rely on the PathFactory content count threshold met. This field that you can see on the screen captures the number of assets that the contact has shown a meaningful level of engagement with in a single click. And so that is represented by what we call the threshold, and it is set by our clients. A marketer could go to PathFactory and set a threshold on the asset level. An example would be 20 seconds. So if a person spends 20 or more seconds looking at that asset, then the count in that field would increase by 1, would be incremented by 1. From there, we can take this data point, and if you could please go to the next slide, and we can build a simple automation rule or a bunch of automation rules that allow us to classify the leads or prospects engagement with the content served via PathFactory. I'm showing on my screen an example of one of those automation rules, which identifies highly engaged prospects. And the idea is that any prospect who has met the threshold or showed a meaningful level of engagement on 3+ assets or more than 3 assets will get, for example, 20+ points added to their Pardot behavioral prospect score. So as you have seen from this, the fact that we capture the amount of time, we capture that binge behavior, enhance the quality of that score metric that you get, while at the same time it doesn't introduce a lot of complexity to the implementation of it. Thank you.
Great. I don't think we can get any better insight than that straight from PathFactory themselves. So thank you, Tarek. Question 2 is, how do I easily reconcile the count of people in Salesforce versus Pardot?
I'll take that. Thank you, James. In answering this question, I wanted to approach it a little bit more holistically, giving a list of some considerations when it comes to this, as opposed to walking through a how-to guide. So really, I think it's important to call out right off the bat that because you have a Salesforce and a Pardot integrated, it really doesn't mean you should be looking for a one-to-one match between the systems. Not all records need to be present in both systems, and in fact, trying to go after a one-to-one sync is probably counter to some best practices. So I'll go through a number of those considerations right now just to give some context here. Each system obviously has its own business purpose, and as such, records will fall under ownership of one of those systems or both of them. So let's start off on the Pardot side. Primarily the marketing tool, it should contain only marketable records, and Pardot can quickly accumulate spam, bounced individuals, people like this. This is only going to eat up your database, and ultimately there's no point for them to be in there. They can be scheduled for automated removal on, using preset rules and processes. Other individuals, such as rejected record types, partners, competitors, they can also be excluded from your marketing efforts and Pardot depending on the particular needs of your organization. Quick considerations around Salesforce. It's on the other side of the house. It's a sales tool primarily. We should only really be concerned with passing qualified records to Salesforce. They don't really need unqualified prospects. And also, depending on your organization, sometimes those partner or competitor records may be valid or not in Salesforce. Now, those were just some high-level basic distinctions. Obviously, every organization is going to be unique and have its own set of advanced business logic. Could be limiting syncs from certain business units, limiting particular record types, maybe limiting by regions, and also ensuring records are passed based upon reporting requirements. So much to say, there's all these considerations, who belongs where and for what purpose, but with the integration being such an important piece for the sales and marketing teams, with anything else, I think it's really important to call out that the setup, maintenance, and management of the integration should be governed by a very clear set of rules and processes. You can automate these things, yes, and ideally you do, but you also need to consider regularly scheduled review to ensure you're getting optimal functionality out of it. I'll just call out 2 things here. One would be related to these cleanup and exclusion rules. Asking the questions, do the records being excluded or removed from both of the systems match the expectations? Setting up an ongoing review process will ensure you're actually getting what you're trying to get and optimal performance is being achieved. Finally, there is a caveat here. In including or excluding records from both systems, you need to keep your eye on some of those reporting goals and ensure that excluding or including people is going to align with some of your reporting requirements organizationally wide. So just a quick recap on that. One-to-one alignment is not necessarily where you should be going, and it's not what we would recommend. Each system has its own purpose and needs that need to be addressed, and keep an eye on things, ensure optimal performance. Hope that was helpful.
Great, thanks, Dan. I'm sure that was helpful to many of our guests. Question 3, we have, what are some Pardot features that are highly valuable but rarely leveraged?
Thanks. Yeah, I'll jump in first, and this is a fun one for us to answer as a consultancy who kind of jumps in and gets to work with lots of different orgs. The first one that I would say is the ability to leverage opportunity data for segmentation, and it's often underutilized just because some people don't really understand how it works in Pardot versus in Salesforce. So in Salesforce, on the opportunity, you have something called an opportunity contact role, where you can associate individual contacts to an opportunity. And it isn't until you actually put a contact on an opportunity that it begins to sync with Pardot. And it's that opportunity contact that has the relationship to the Pardot prospect. So if you were to try to do some segmentation on Pardot for an opportunity where there's no opportunity contact role, you'd think, oh, maybe they're on this account, they should be, abiding by this logic. Well, it's not really how it works. So the value in using these opportunity contact roles is that you can remove people from top of funnel activities. If they are a part of the sales cycle, you can have, highly tailored communications, and you can create custom tasks and notifications for the owner of that opportunity if they have some specific types of engagement. So that's probably it. And one little tip associated to this is that if you're in a sales org that doesn't leverage the opportunity contact role, and you think that's probably not something that's going to happen anytime soon, another popular thing to do is to create a field on the account that's just a roll-up of the number of open opportunities, and then you can leverage that, but then you really just get a binary like yes or no. You don't really get that advanced segmentation on the opportunity data, but that's a kind of intermediary solution to opportunity management.
I thought that was a great question when that came in, and some good answers to back that up. Do we have any other tips on that one? I think we had.
Well, I'll take handlebar merge language. This is a feature that Salesforce rolled out more recently, and it's one that a lot of people don't understand what handlebar merge language is, or HML. And it really is a replacement for the Pardot merge language that comes with some really key benefits that I wanted to cover, which is why I feel like this is an underutilized feature and people really do need to be taking advantage of and just being aware of some of the considerations. So really the key thing here is that handlebar merge language is the same field merge language that you get in Salesforce. So if you're using email templates across Pardot and Salesforce, then you don't need to change your variable tags. What you would have previously seen as the percentage sign field merges, often used for, as you can see in the example, including a dynamic first name for an individual in an email. So this brings those in line, so they can be used right across both systems. The other thing is that you can now code in logic. As you can see in the example here, if we don't have the data for an individual, instead of having hello first name, we're just saying hello with an exclamation mark. And one of the other things is, people who are familiar with the standard field mergers or variable tags in Pardot, you only could set one default for a field. So if they didn't have a first name value, you would have to pick one value that worked across the board. With this, you can have different different values as your default on an email by email basis. So really powerful, really something that we encourage people to take advantage of. Now, some of the quick considerations here are that once you turn on this feature, you can't revert back. There used to be a consideration that this wasn't actually rolled out to start across emails, landing pages, forms, etc. But now Pardot has rolled this out across the board, so that's no longer something to worry about. And just another real quick tidbit here is that just be aware that you cannot merge in multi-select fields. So if you got a multi-select field that's a custom one, you won't see the multiple values. For out of the box ones, you won't see multiple values, but there at least you will see the latest value that they've selected. So definitely recommend taking advantage of handlebar merge language and making the conversion.
Thank you, John. So we've got a couple more features to chat about. One is another one is connected campaigns. So the value here of connected campaigns really is that marketers can track campaign influence across multiple campaigns, so multi-touch attribution, and sales can actually see the different campaigns that somebody's interacted with. Pardot campaigns historically have been kind of treated like, what is that first interaction that drove that prospect to engage with your business? And that's really not a full spectrum of the engagement that that person has had over time. So connected campaigns looks to make Pardot campaigns look and behave a little bit more like Salesforce campaigns, where you can be a member of multiple campaigns and have different statuses in those campaigns. And so that enables a lot of the excellent reporting in the B2B analytics dashboard, and it also pushes some of that information over to the campaign itself. So within the campaign, you can see things like the email metrics, form metrics, and landing page metrics, all on the Salesforce campaign as well.
All right, and I'll take on user sync. This is actually a feature that I've been advocating for some time amongst our clients, especially if you are utilizing the Salesforce CRM platform. This feature allows you to set some rules that basically allow you to automatically sync users from Salesforce that meet the conditions of those rules and give them permissions in Pardot. So you can automatically create sales users in Pardot for sales users in Salesforce, marketing users, etc., and give them the different permissions automatically that they need. Why this is so beneficial is that this user sync, when enabled, takes care of all the user management that typically required by the marketing team. So if somebody leaves the organization, their user automatically will no longer have access to Pardot. If a user joins the organization and they meet the criteria to have a Pardot license, they will automatically come over and be created. So this is something that absolutely, from a security standpoint, is a really great feature to have. And just a quick call out as well with this: if you do have an SSO implementation, you would log in with that SSO instead of the specific Salesforce login to access the system. So one of the things, and for those of you active in the platform, you may have noticed a warning that there's going to be some changes coming in this area. This is actually something that Salesforce is going to require users to do. They're going to be retiring the Pardot user management system in the spring 21 release. And so this is something that, you're going to have to do anyway, and may as well go through and do it now and start reaping the benefits of this. Now, for some folks on the call, they maybe think, well, I don't have Salesforce, so how does this impact me? What am I going to do if I can't log in with my Pardot user? I don't have a Salesforce user. Well, Salesforce is actually, towards the end of this year, going to be bundling in what they call a Salesforce identity license. And that's going to be backwards compatible and moving forward. And basically, it allows you to have a Salesforce user for login purposes to take advantage of this Salesforce login functionality. And then all Pardot users effectively after Spring 21 will be logging in with these Salesforce licenses. So stay tuned for more details on that, but definitely something that you can get ahead of now and not wait till the next till that release.
Thanks, John. I'm just going to call out something quickly related to an update last August to Engagement Studio that really improved the power and flexibility of it. For those of you who haven't ventured into that area of Pardot recently, this may be nice to know, so I thought I'd just call it out. Previously, any kind of decisions in Engagement Studio required a one-by-one evaluation, essentially creating a daisy chain of evaluations to come up with complex rules. Not only did this take up screen real estate, it really complicated the visual clarity of your workflow, and just it made it rather slow. The update last summer, it now allows for the combining of up to 5 conditional statements using any or all logic into one decision rule. I think it should be apparent enough to anybody who's familiar with that portion of Pardot that just cleaner UI, faster to set things up, and just it should make your life easier. So if you haven't been in there in a while, just be aware that that is now a new functionality, and it will make your life a lot easier.
All right, thanks for all those insights, guys. We often see really useful features left untouched by organizations, so that'll help with that. On to the next question, which is, what are spam filters' impact on click and open metrics?
Yeah, so this is one that across the entire email marketing world is kind of wreaking havoc. And so we had a question come in where we had someone that had recently launched Pardot scoring, and they had seen that a lot of the corporate spam checking bots were clicking on their emails, and they had scoring associated to those clicks, and it was flooding their MQLs with a number of bot related clicks. So so how does a company go about that in Pardot? So the first thing is that back in November of 2018, Pardot put in a bit of a first take at trying to limit that bot activity from affecting your instance. So within the visitor filters, there was a bunch of IPs that were added in there that would block those known spam checkers from creating activities. So if you were to look in different areas of the application, you might see that the click numbers looks different than somewhere else. For example, within the Engagement Studio reporting, you can see a higher number than an email template report, and that's because some of those filters are being recognized and some of them are not. But with those filters, they're kind of they're a first stopping of some of that bot behavior. That is not the full suite of IPs that are out there clicking on those links, and I think everyone can recognize that. So what do you do about it? The challenge there is that it's never going to be foolproof, and where the entire marketing automation landscape is kind of leaning towards is to get away from using opens and clicks as qualifying criteria. I think that it's kind of clear that opens for a long time had long been seen as low value, and we're getting to the point now where clicks are kind of seeing that same behavior, email clicks. And to speak to what Tarek was speaking about earlier regarding PathFactory, is moving that engagement farther down the behavior and qualifying at that later stage really just becomes that much more valuable, because it's a realization that this is a real person doing real activities, as well as it's actually more engaged. Just a quick note on the spam activities. So if Pardot does recognize it as a spam click, then it doesn't perform completion actions. So if you have your spam bots that are clicking on those links, if it recognizes it as a spam bot, then it won't run completion actions on that. But as we can see, it's not catching all of them.
Great, thanks, James. That leaves us time for our final question, which is, what are best practices for a Pardot sandbox?
Thanks, James. I can take that first part. Just so as of summer 2020, Salesforce has released a new feature which essentially enables Pardot Sandboxes, and I think that's a feature that a lot of Pardot and Salesforce admins have been been waiting for. A brief overview. So there are two types of sandboxes that are now available. One is called a training sandbox, which is in itself it's like a standalone instance, so it doesn't have any production data or anything like that. It's just something that you can play around with and like build your features in. And then you have a development sandbox, which essentially is going to be a copy of your complete production instance, which basically means that it's going to have all of the configurations that you currently have in production. A few things to note there as well is the fact that per Pardot organization, you've only got access to one development sandbox. And then this feature is only available for, I believe, Pardot Advanced or Pardot Premium with the version 2 connector. And the important thing to note here as well is the fact that the Pardot sandbox will essentially be connected to a full copy Salesforce sandbox. And a full copy Salesforce sandbox essentially is contains all of your production Salesforce metadata as well as all of your actual data as well. So it kind of enables you to set up a very kind of a good unique development cycle where you can develop features and you can actually test them out with real life data instead of the way it was before, which wasn't really connected. One other thing to note is the fact that as is the case with Salesforce development cycles, but it's not the case with Pardot, is the fact that you can't promote stuff from your sandbox Pardot instance to your production Pardot instance. And then aside from that, we do not have the ability within the sandbox to be able to test email sending, email testing, and you don't have access to Salesforce Engage or any B2B marketing analytics as well. And then once you are able to enable this feature and get everything set up, a couple of things to, like in my experience, to test would probably be, the most important one would probably be around automation. So basically, testing out automation rules that end up impacting a large volume or record of data, because in my experience, that's something where things can go wrong. And prior to this feature being enabled, we did not really have the ability to do that. But with this feature now, you can go ahead and do all the testing you want to. And I think, James, do you want to quickly touch on the just around the development cycle and the best practices that we have in our organization?
Yeah, just two little tidbits here. One is because you're working in a full Salesforce sandbox, that's typically the sandbox that the Salesforce development team uses as a pre-release to prod. So that's going to be a pretty locked down instance, meaning the recommendations is to work in an agile marketing development cycle. So your Salesforce team is probably working in a similar way where they have scheduled sprints and releases. So operate within the same type of structure and align to Salesforce's development cycle, because you're going to be probably needing to do a lot of this stuff in lockstep with Salesforce development. So if you can align your release schedule with their release schedule, that'll make your Pardot development sandbox testing just go a lot smoother.
Right, and that completes our agenda for today. Thanks as always to our panelists, and a special thank you to Tarek for joining us. Also a big thanks to you for joining us today. If we didn't get your question or answer it directly, then please do reach out to us and we will continue that conversation offline. We will be making this video available on demand in the next day, so please look out for that on our website and social channels if there are any points from the episode that you want to go back to. And then lastly, look out for episode 4, which will be coming to you next month. Have a great day.
Thanks all.